Hello everyone, my name is Otavio and this is the Galilean Library. And I'm here today with a somewhat unconventional wrap-up. I didn't do a wrap-up for March because I actually only finished one book and one short story, so that wasn't good. Yeah. And I actually finished a lot of books in the past 2 weeks, so I decided to do a wrap-up of the first 2 weeks of April and the entirety of March, which is just one book and one short story. I mean, who cares, right? It's fine, I guess. I think, maybe. I read in total in the past 1 month and 2 weeks a total of 2 short stories and 3 novels. Now, the short stories, I'll be just telling you which ones they were, and I'll be talking more about them when I do my videos for the Hugo short story nominees and the Nebula short story nominees, because those two are part of each one of those categories. So the Hugo nominated short story that I read was Total by Carrie English, and the Nebula nominated short story that I read was The Breath of War by Aliette de Bodad. I should be finishing all the short stories soon, so the reviews should be coming up in the next week or so. Now for the novels I read. In March, the only one novel I finished was actually A Giant, so I'm not feeling too bad about that one. And it was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. And this is actually a Hugo winner, I think a Nebula winner as well, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I really loved this book, so good. So this takes place in Regency, England. That is the beginning of the 1800s, during the Napoleonic Wars. It's also written as if it's a novel from that time, so it's a pastiche style to mimic Charles Dickens, Jane Austen, and all of their peers from that time period. It's really fantastic at that. It really does read like a novel of the time. So now for my 5 parameters. I gave the premise for this one 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, English magicians, what's not to love about that? I love it. And it's so snarky, it's perfect. And plot and pace, I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the reason for that is because I think it's a little too long. There were a lot of parts here regarding the war and regarding the magician's role in the war, and I liked it. It was interesting, but the story could have done without it, so that sort of broke the pace a little bit, so that's why I gave it a lower score. Now, characters, 5 out of 5 stars. I loved every single character in here, and by loved, I mean I loved the way they were developed, and I loved how they progressed through the story. Not specifically that I loved them, because some of them are hideously terrible, and some are great, some are infuriating at times, and lovable at other times, you know, and that's something that I really value in characters, when they can really, like, pull your nerves and infuriate you, and make you, like, hate them so much. That's, I don't know, that's just something that I like in my characters. Call me sadistic. Now, the writing style, as I said, is a pastiche of the Regency England period, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. It's really fantastic. I really love Susanna Clarke's writing. It's beautiful, it's very detailed, and it's very snarky, very English. Really loved it. And the best part about this novel is the ending. I'm not gonna say much about it, because that would be a spoiler, of course, but I gave it 5 stars. It's so good. Everything wraps up perfectly. This is really good. So the average was 4.3 stars. Fantastic book. I highly recommend it for anyone who likes Jane Austen and Charles Dickens and likes some magical elements as well. If you like fantasy and those authors, you will love this book. And the second book I finished, and this was actually in April, the first weekend of April, was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And this is a post-apocalyptic book in which a disease, a flu, wipes the population of the Earth. After the events of that unfold, several years after the epidemic is over, these survivors are scattered around the world. And the story follows a troupe of traveling actors performing Shakespeare plays across America. And since I sporadically work in the theater industry here in New York, I also feel very connected to those characters. I understand a lot of what they're going through, and I sympathize. So the premise of that specifically, of having a focus on artistic people after the apocalypse, was very new and very interesting. So I gave the premise for this book 4 out of 5 stars. Now, the plot and pace didn't fare so well. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars because basically the way this novel is structured is split between the time, like before the epidemic and during and after, following the troop and other people around America. I felt like it needed to be longer for that style to work and for me to care about the characters, because it was jumping around in time and perspective so much that I didn't have any time to get bonded with the characters and care about them. So yeah, like that really didn't work for me. And perhaps if it was longer, or perhaps if it followed just one group a little bit more, I would have felt more engaged with them. So yeah, unfortunately that wasn't the case. Now, characters, I gave 3.5 stars, and a part of it is because I couldn't relate to them because of the plot, and another part is because just a handful of the many characters in this were really recognizable and well developed. The others were sort of like sideline characters, and I understand it's a shorter novel, there isn't much space to develop everyone, but I would have loved for at least more than 2 characters to be well developed and well established, and that wasn't the case as well. But the ones that were established were really great. I really enjoyed their stories, so 3.5 stars, yeah. And writing and storytelling, I also gave 3.5 stars because the writing is phenomenally beautiful, but it's not serving the story because of the structure of the novel, so yeah, unfortunately, the breaks really go like seeping through all of the categories because that wasn't a great structure for me. Yeah, but in terms of just like the writing per se, it was interesting, and it served the characters, and it described everything really well, and I could really place this world, I could really place the situations, so that was good. So 3.5 out of 5 stars. And ending and satisfaction. This did end really well. It was a well, like, connected ending. Everything came together. So 4 out of 5 stars. And the average comes to 3.5 stars. Good book. I really recommend it still, even if you love post-apocalyptic novels and want something with a twist, something a little different from your regular dystopian. So this is good for that. Don't expect it to blow your mind, unless you don't care about that structure problem that I think is a problem. Maybe other people won't. Yeah. And the last novel I finished was Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Kara Rivka Brunt, and this was for my real life book club, and our first meeting is going to be held at the end of this month, and I'm really excited for that. And this was actually a really good story. I loved it. And I wasn't expecting to. Going in, I was sort of expecting to not really like it, but I actually really did. So the premise basically is we follow June, who is the main character and the narrator. The story is told in her perspective, and we follow her and her relationship with her family, and specifically her uncle who has AIDS and is about to die. So it's about how she deals with his death. It's about her relationship with her sister as well, and how that parallels with her mother's relationship with her uncle. And the premise is really interesting, but I feel like I've seen other books that are somewhat similar, at least dealing with similar subjects, so I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Now for the plot and pace. It was really well paced. I liked the perspective. We really get to know June, even though she is sort of annoying sometimes. It was interesting all the way through. I really loved the story. I really loved the way it was plotted and paced. And it was sort of like a slow burner with some spikes in intensity, and that was really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Characters, I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars because the characters were great. I really loved it. It's a character-driven story, so you would expect the characters to be great, and they are really well developed. And the only drawback for me was that the mother's that June's mother's storyline wasn't that well developed towards the end. I thought it was a bit forgotten, but what can you do? I mean, it was still good. All of the characters were really interesting, and yeah, so really great characters in this one. The writing and storytelling. Now, this is the lower point for me in the novel. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And the reason for that is that I feel the writer is like sometimes falling into some tropes on speech patterns and what people would say and what people wouldn't, and certain characters' decisions and that sort of thing. Like, for example, she loves to use the phrase, "and that's that." Like for whenever a character wants to be assertive or when they want to put out an order, like anything the character is trying to be that's assertive in any way, she uses that phrase all over the book, and that sort of like stuck out for me. As soon as I realized that was happening, I couldn't stop looking out for it, so that wasn't great. It sort of like prevented my suspension of disbelief. Yeah, but other than that, it was good. It was okay. It wasn't like phenomenal, but it was good, you know. And ending in satisfaction, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I really loved it. The only reason why I didn't give it 5 stars was because of the mother storyline and how that didn't end the way I wanted it to, or the way I was expecting to see, you know, like a little bit more development in that area. But other than that, everything ended really, really well. Like, it was a really well-structured ending, and I loved it. I won't say any more about it, of course, but yeah, like, look forward to a great ending in this book. It's really good. Now, that's it for my wrap-up, guys. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to see more, click subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao. Loved it. I only not...